Hey everybody, it's Zahira here, and this is actually my second attempt doing this live video. This is the first time this has ever happened. I brought the wrong notes into my office, and so now I have the right notes. So let's officially get started. My name is Zahira with Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and I just did a Facebook Live a second ago and had to delete it, so here I am back again with the right notes. This is our workshop, how to deal with difficult people. And since we don't have anybody live yet, I don't see anybody, I want to start off with some announcements. So first of all, this is our first Facebook Live for 2018, and this is also our first Facebook Live class at my new place. So some of you know that I moved twice this past fall. This is my very first Facebook Live in this particular room in this office, and maybe I'm a perfectionist, but I feel like the lighting isn't really as good as I would want it to be. So I do have some better lights that I'm going to install, and so the lighting should be even cleaner and sharper for our next class. But we're just going to keep on going, lighting, fuzzy lighting and all. So now in the past we always had lots of people jumping in at first, but here's the thing. When I moved and I moved again, and we actually took a break on our Facebook Live, free Facebook Live classes over the holidays between Thanksgiving and New Year's, we actually didn't have any Facebook Live classes. When I tuned in, it just felt like everybody was really busy, and so I thought, well, I just moved, I need time to unpack. Everybody's really busy with the holidays, so we're going to take a break. Last year, very regularly, we had Facebook Live classes in my Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group twice a month, and it was very regular about that. And then over New Year's, I took some time to think about, I always take time to evaluate what's working and what's not working and what do I need to tweak. And what I realized is that I do really want to keep doing these Facebook Live classes. I do love doing them, but I'm going to be doing them once a month. And from now on, we're going to be having our free Facebook Live classes the first Monday evening every month. But January, that was New Year's Day, and I knew a lot of people would be busy. So it's January 15th, 2018 as I'm recording this. And so our next, starting in February, we will regularly have classes on the first Monday of every month at 6 p.m. Central Time, because here I am in Kansas. Okay, so that's it for that announcement. And, next exciting announcement, I am almost done with my book. So some of you who've been in this group for a while, know that I've been writing a book called Darkness Disguised as Light, and it's all about psychic protection and my own one of my personal experiences with a psychic attack that was very extreme. And so I'm almost done with that book. So in the next month, I'm sure it will either be available or available for pre-order. So, and by the way, normally we don't have all these announcements at the beginning, but we do this time. And I promise we will get to our content, how to deal with difficult people. Let's see. We have anything else? Okay, so far I don't see anybody live, so it looks like, we just really need to get back into the swing of things with our regular schedule. And we used to have lots of people joining us live. I do have a page of notes, stuff to cover with all of you. So if you end up watching the replay in the Facebook group, the Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group, feel free to comment. Post a comment below, and if it's a question for me, make sure to tag me, because sometimes those comments get lost and I don't see them. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then also feel free to comment or post any questions, and let's start a discussion. So before we get into our class content, I want to just do an official introduction. So as I said before, my name is Maya Zahira, and I am the founder of Psychic Protection Sanctuary. I'm actually located in Kansas City. This is my treatment room, but I do work all over the world. Gosh, I was working with somebody long distance in Argentina the other day, and I'm trying to remember, like all different countries, like all the time. It's kind of cool. So I work with people over the phone and online and video sessions, and I do clearings. So I do spiritual clearings, I do psychic readings, and I teach classes. And again, I do all of that both online and in Kansas City. And I'm really passionate about doing this work. Not only do I love helping people heal, but I personally have gone through some very severe psychic attack situations in my own life. And I've also been an empath my whole life. So I've always been super sensitive, and I've had to learn how to deal with all of the sensitivities. And I also had to learn how to how to release that psychic attack. I guess I had to release some energy there. How to release the psychic attack situations that I was going through, because I wasn't able to find any mentors or teachers or spiritual healers who really believed what I was going through. There's a lot of people out there that don't believe, that just feel safer just focusing on, I call it love and light la la land. And I wish that everything was love and light la la land, but the reality in our world is that there really are all kinds of energies out there. So I had to learn firsthand and figure things out on my own. Also, a lot of stuff in books nowadays is actually not watered down, or it sounds cool, but it doesn't really work. And so because some of the situations that I was going through were very severe. So some of the things in books, in the New Age books, will work for basic negative energy situations, like there's negative vibes somewhere, but not for like actual demonic attacks and things like that. And so I have studied all areas of the spectrum, from just some negative vibes because there was somebody who had a negative attitude that was in the room, or all the way to like severe demonic attacks, and how to clear all of that, and how to deal with it. So that's why I'm so passionate about all this, and that's why I have all this information. I've literally I went through a really major psychic attack a couple of years ago, and in the aftermath of that, I realized I actually I started getting this, I just started getting a download of all of this information about psychic protection, about the energies that are out there, and what we need to do about it, and so on and so forth. So all the information that I share is, it's direct download. So, so that's me rambling and telling you about what I do and how passionate I am about it. And for people going through really serious issues, it's a really serious thing. Like, this is very serious work. And then I think that's all I want to say about that. I was going to go on and on. Let's go into our content for this evening, and it's how to deal with difficult people. And before we do, I'm going to get a little drink. I made vegetable broth, homemade. I found this special recipe that a friend sent me, and I'm doing a broth fast. Probably today and tomorrow. I've done it all day today, and it's to reset my system, I don't believe in doing weight loss fast. This is for health purposes. So this is to rebalance my body. And I'm curious, if we had a bunch of people in the group, I'd be asking everybody live, but I'm curious what your, I don't want to call them resolutions, because everybody breaks their New Year's resolutions. But what are your New Year's goals? Like, is there something that you want to improve in your life, and how are you going to do it? So one of my goals is continuing on my health and healing journey. I have some genetic issues that I'm working on balancing and healing, and so I'm doing this as well as many other things. So when you watch the replay, what are you doing in the new year? What is it that's not working for you, and what do you want to what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? So good. Okay, so how to deal with difficult people now that we're done with a million announcements and really reconnecting with all of you, because it's been a while. It's been a couple of months, 2 months, I think, 2.5 months. So how to deal with difficult people. All of us have encountered difficult people throughout our lives, and I'm sure when you saw the title of this, you were like, oh my God, I need help with that. Because we all need help with dealing with difficult people. I need help with it too. I still have to remind myself of the things that I'm going to tell you, the tips for how to navigate situations with difficult people. But before we talk about how to and what to do about difficult people, let's talk about a few of the different kinds of difficult people out there. And as I'm going through this, if you can relate and you're having any particular issues with any of these kind of difficult people, then hey, Lisa, good to see you. Yay. We have a small group today because we got out of the routine. We used to have these Facebook Live classes all the time. So now we're getting back into a routine. So right now I'm getting ready to talk about some of the different kinds of difficult people out there. And if you can relate to any of these certain kinds, then write a comment or give a thumbs up or a heart or a sad face or whatever it is that you want to respond. Okay, number one kind of difficult person is a boundary violator. So this is somebody who they totally step all over your boundaries. They a lot of times are manipulative because all they want is what they want, and you can even clearly state what your boundaries are and what you are and are not willing to do, and they totally disregard that, and it's like they don't even hear it, and they just keep going for what they want or just stepping all over your boundaries. So that's what I call a boundary violator. And that shows up in all kinds of relationships, as do all of these on this list. The next type of difficult person is what a lot of people call an energy vampire. And an energy vampire is somebody who, whenever you have spent any amount of time with them, even if it's over the phone or in person, doesn't matter, you feel exhausted afterwards. Or even during, when you're talking to them, it's like your energy is getting drained. They usually feel better and you feel worse because on an energetic level, they've plugged into you an energy cord and they're literally sucking your life force. Now, some energy vampires are doing it intentionally, and some of them are totally unaware that they're doing it, but they will suck energy. And some of those energy vampires are like, they have the martyr syndrome, so they're like, oh, poor me, or for whatever reason, they are plugging in and sucking energy. And those people have got to go. You can't have energy vampires in your life. Next type of difficult person, let me look at my list here. Okay, this is someone, I'm just going to use the term toxic, someone who is really toxic. Now, all these people on the list are toxic, but let me let me explain what I mean by by a toxic person. This is someone who is so much living from their pain body, like their pain is just hanging all out there. And so what that means is that no matter what you say or do, or how lovingly and nicely you try to interact with them, their pain body is so activated that they will respond with just toxic stuff back at you. You can say something so nice to them and be so nice, but they're so toxic and so damaged, really, that it's like they hear something else completely. If you say something so nice to them, it goes through their filter and they hear God knows what they hear. And so they lash out at you. And oftentimes the toxic person, when they lash out, they'll be saying things that some psychologists call crazy making types of things. Like you'll say something totally like rational and normal to them, and then they will come back with some kind of like angry reply that makes no sense, and you're like, what did they hear me say? Because I just said something really nice. And so that's a toxic person, somebody who is just so wounded that no matter what you say to them, they're going to be verbally attacking you and arguing and saying horrible things to you, and you know, the crazy making behaviors, crazy making things that they're going to be saying. Let's see, we're on number 4. The next type of difficult person is a sociopath. And I don't have the official definition right in front of me, but I'm just going to use my own definition here. You know, it's really somebody, a sociopath is really someone who really has no conscience. And so they can go about hurting people and destroying people's lives. And one thing that a sociopath might do is something called gaslighting. And that is that they will say and do things to actually make you question your own sanity. And the reason that they're doing that is that they're manipulating you to their will. And it does not make them feel guilty at all, because as a sociopath, they don't have any sense of conscience or good or bad at all. And then last on the list of difficult people would just be simply somebody that you just don't get along with. It's not that they're an energy vampire. They're not a sociopath. They're not really that toxic. It's just that your personalities clash and you really don't get along. And so in that sense, they are a difficult person in your life, and maybe you're a difficult person for them too. So it goes both ways. Let's see. I mentioned gaslighting, and I'd like to take a second to just explain that a little bit more in the context of sociopathic behavior. Gaslighting is when, and I did explain it, but I'll explain it some more. Gaslighting is when the person will try to make you think that you're crazy. So you'll be having a conversation with them about something that actually happened, and they'll say, that didn't happen. No, it didn't. And you're like, am I crazy? What? I know that happened. I was there. And they're like, no, it didn't happen at all. Another thing that they'll do with gaslighting is that they'll make up lies, oftentimes that are based on the truth. So there's truth mixed in there. So it sounds convincing. And so they'll tell those lies to all of the people in your world. Those lies will be about you. And they'll turn everybody against you so that you're all alone. And that is a very serious manipulation technique, gaslighting. Hey, Christina, welcome. So we're finally getting back into our routine of our Facebook Live classes. I did make a bunch of announcements at the beginning, so go back later and you can watch the beginning part. So that's my list of the different kinds of difficult people in my own brain, how I categorize them. And you might have some other categories that you might think of. And in fact, if there's anything that you feel like I haven't covered, go ahead and comment right now. So could you relate to any of those kinds of toxic people, of those kinds of difficult people? We've all encountered some of them, if not all of them, in our life. Some of us tend to attract certain ones more than others. I know for me in my life, I used to attract a lot of energy vampires, and I healed that. So I don't tend to attract them as much anymore, but I have always tended to attract the people that I would refer to as toxic, the people who are so damaged and so much in their pain body that no matter what you say to them, they just lash out and lash back. And so I know there's some people, some of my friends who have talked about ongoing issues with attracting sociopaths. Oh, I didn't mention narcissists. Narcissists are the people that everything is about them. Like, now we all are me-centered sometimes, like you focus on you talk about yourself sometimes, right? That's not a narcissist. A narcissist really doesn't even consider the feelings or experiences of another person. It's all about them. Okay, so add that to the list as well. Yeah, so we have the boundary violators, the energy vampires, the toxic people who are just so emotionally damaged, the sociopaths, which includes gaslighting behaviors, and the narcissists. And I'm sure that there are other kinds of difficult people as well. And I also forgot to mention, there's just those people that you simply don't get along with personality-wise, right? Okay, so Christina, you're saying, yeah, some of the people that you've attracted the most are the narcissistic people. Yeah, so one thing that you can do, if there's a certain category that you can identify, some of these categories do have books all about them. So there actually are books all about sociopaths, and I know there's books about narcissists, and actually there's a lot of information coming out more nowadays about how empaths and narcissists tend to be very attracted to each other. They end up in relationships a lot. And so this video isn't really about that, but there's literature out there about that, if that happens to fit with your description. Okay, so I have a couple of really basic, simple steps for how to deal with difficult people. Now, each of those different kinds of difficult people that I listed, you're going to have different kinds of encounters with each type of category. And of course, some of your situations might be really complicated, like somebody that you can't get away from and they're around you like all the time. That can be really, really challenging. So I'm definitely not trying to say that these difficult people situations are simple, but I do have some steps that are actually really simple, and because they're simple, I don't want you to just blow them off. I want you to actually try them. A lot of times we assume that something has to be complicated in order for it to work, but that's not the case in this situation. These are simple steps. Okay, so it might be a good idea to take notes on this part. So take a second and grab a pen and paper, and I'm going to give you a short list of stuff to write down. Okay, First recommendation for dealing with difficult people, step by step. Number 1, get clear on your boundaries. The thing is, there are people out there that are not trying to be difficult, but they don't know what your boundaries are. And even the people who are being difficult, how are you going to set clear boundaries with them if you haven't gotten clear in your own mind about what is okay for you and what's not okay for you? You really have to get crystal clear. Okay, whatever the situation is, get crystal clear on what you're not okay with anymore. And not only that, but you have to get clear on what the consequences are going to be. Because you can't just set a boundary and then if they're a boundary violator kind of person, they're going to just break that boundary. They're going to just, or if they're a narcissist, they're going to blow off whatever you say. They're just going to keep going for what they want. So you need to get really clear on what your boundaries are, and then you need to get really clear on what the consequence will be. For example, my adopted mother, my mom who raised me when she was still alive, as an adult I would go and visit her. And so I was at her house one time, and now she was a narcissist. And she also had other mental illness. And she had a habit of getting angry and calling me nasty names. And so there was one time that I was over there. Now, she was a big boundary teacher for me, for sure. One time I was over at her house, and we would usually last a couple of hours before she would before her nice side would slide off and her name calling would start. And I remember I walked up the stairs I was staying in the guest room upstairs, walked up the stairs, and she called after me. She was at the bottom of the stairs, and she was calling me nasty names. And I remember standing at the top of the stairs, and I looked down at her, and I said, "You cannot call me nasty names anymore, and if you continue, I'm going to leave." Now, guess what? 5 minutes later, she started up again. And so I gathered my things and I left. I drove, I forget where I was living at the time, but I was not living in Kansas City, so I was visiting from out of town. I had driven a couple of hours to be there, and I got in my car and I drove a couple of hours back home. And the next time I came to visit, she tried a little bit harder because she really did want to see me. She missed me, but she couldn't control herself. But she tried harder to control herself next time I saw her, because I left. And I didn't do it in a big huff. It was very matter of fact. Now, I understand there are some circumstances where you cannot remove yourself from the situation. So you might have to get more creative about whatever the consequences will be. But at any rate, your step is to get clear on what your boundaries are. Set those boundaries by communicating them to the other person clearly. And also clearly communicate what the consequences will be. Okay, if you keep doing blah, 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 this is what I will do. This is the action that I will take. And then the next really important step is you have to hold your boundaries. Chances are, if this is the first time that you've set boundaries with them, they are most likely going to break those. They're most likely going to break those boundaries. Okay, like pretty quickly. They're probably going to turn right around and break the boundaries. And you have to follow through on what you said you were going to do. Otherwise, that will give, if you don't follow through, it's going to give them the message that, you're not going to do anything about it, so they can just keep doing it. So you have to set the boundary. You have to follow through on the consequences. Now, if they are a really difficult person, they might very well get really angry and or pile a big, huge guilt trip onto you about how you're being so horrible to them by, taking whatever consequence actions that you're taking. And you just have to hold strong. You just have to know that you were very clear in your own mind about what was okay and what wasn't okay. And when you have that clarity, they can be yelling and screaming, they can be trying to lay a guilt trip on you, but when you follow through on what you say your consequences are and what the boundaries are and what the consequences are, when you follow through on that, what that means is that you are being in integrity with your word. And you're being in integrity with yourself and with them. And by the way, you're not doing them any favors by letting them treat you like crap. Letting someone treat you like crap is called enabling. So enabling is not a healthy thing to do. It's giving them permission to keep being horrible to you and probably to other people as well. So if they're trying to lay on you about how you've hurt their feelings or you're so horrible to them or whatever, remember that you actually are doing them a favor by holding true to the consequences. Okay, so you're doing them a favor. All right, so remember that, because I know so many people in my circles are such heart-centered people that you really care about others, and so when the narcissist or the sociopath or the energy vampire, whoever it is, starts to lay on a thick guilt trip when you set your boundaries because you're so heart-centered, you might feel really bad about it, feel really guilty, and that it's going to be really easy for them to guilt trip you. So you have to remember that allowing them to continue is actually harmful to them as well as you. So you're not doing them any favors by letting them continue. Okay? So you've held your boundaries, you've set consequences. Now here's a couple of other things that you can do if it's an ongoing issue. You can either limit contact with that person or you can cut contact altogether. Now, I'm going to talk in just a minute about what to do if you cannot limit contact. Let's say it's your boss at work or something like that, or a coworker that sits right next to you or something like that, and you can't get away from them. But let's talk about limiting contact and cutting contact. So limiting contact, if you're able to do this, even if it's with a family member or anybody in your world, actually, let me just clarify. If it's someone that's not super important in your world, you really should just cut them out completely. Like if it's just some random distant acquaintance that's making weird comments on Facebook to you, just unfriend them and block them. Like just clear that out. It's not like they're a family member, right? So just get that out. You don't need that, and bring in more positive energy into your world. Okay, so I'm very liberal with blocking, and on Facebook, if someone is being really difficult, I just block them and I send them love. It's not done with anger. It's just who needs that? Okay. But if it's someone that you really can't cut them out of your world, or whether it's at your workplace or if it's a family member and you really don't feel right about cutting them out completely, then you can limit contact. For example, let's say that it's someone who calls you on the phone, and every time they do, they go on and on about all this drama going on in their life, and it just sucks your energy away. So what you could do is limit how often you speak to them. If they call you every day and you don't want to talk every day, and it's someone who's a family member and you feel like you should at least be talking to them once in a while, go ahead and say, I'd like to set up a schedule so we talk every Sunday. And then you get really clear, how long am I okay talking to this person before it really has an adverse effect on me? Can I talk for 10 minutes and still be okay? Okay, so I'm setting the boundary. I know I'm going to set a limit to talk to this person for only 10 minutes. And then after that, I have to go. And I don't owe them any excuses or reasons. You know what? I have something that I need to do. I have to go. Or even when you first get on the phone with them, you can say, hi, it's so great to hear from you. How are you doing? Just want to let you know right off the bat that I only have 10 minutes today, but how are you doing? What's going on? And then after 10 minutes, 10 minutes is up. I really have to go. If they're a narcissist, they're going to try to keep you on the line. They're going to try to guilt trip you. But in fact, there have been times, like with my mother when she was alive, she would be like, what? You have to go? You're such a terrible daughter, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, okay, Mom, I love you, bye. And I'd still hear her talking. She'd start yelling. She'd be like yelling. And I'd be like, okay, I got to go, bye, as I'm hanging the phone down. And so I wouldn't hang up on her. I would say that I was leaving. I'd say that I was hanging up. But, the difficult person can keep right on yammering along, but you can still hang that phone up, okay? So that's an example of limiting contact. So get clear ahead of time how much time you can spend with this person or talk to them on the phone. If it's an in-person gathering, like, can you survive visiting for an hour? How long can you survive? How long before you're really going crazy? So set the time limit before you're going crazy, okay? And then there are circumstances where you really can't limit contact. It's like, I mentioned a work situation before. Sometimes you can get creative. If it's someone who's sitting by you, could you talk to your supervisor and see if maybe you could be moved? Okay. But if there's no way that you can get away with this from this person, maybe it's a family member who's living with you, and you are not able to change that living circumstance at this time for whatever reason. So it's not so easy when you're in that kind of circumstance. It's a little bit harder to limit contact, and you certainly can't cut off contact altogether, right? Let me see here. Christina says, some pull you in little by little, and next you know you are sort of stuck and wondered what the heck happened. Good advice. Christina, that is so right. Such a good point there. I've had that happen too, where everything seems fine at first, and you think, whatever type of relationship it is, think everything's good, and then just little things start to happen, and you're like, well, maybe that was just a one-time occurrence. Maybe everything's fine. And then a little bit more happens, and a little bit more happens, and before you know it, after a while, you're like, oh my God, this is a totally toxic situation. How did I get into this? And especially when it comes to like sociopaths, people who are intentionally manipulating, they will often, show little parts of that toxic behavior just a little bit at a time. But at first, it will be like magical. It'll be like the romance of a lifetime, right? And then little by little, their true side starts to show. So it's kind of scary. That's why, with myself and any of my friends, if they are getting into a relationship and it's like amazing and a whole whirlwind of, amazing romance and just like over the top, I'm like, that's a red flag. Okay, it should be a little more stabilized, because usually that's a sign that there's something toxic going on behind the scenes. And that is actually part of the literature, at least 25 years ago when I got out of a marriage with someone who was a sociopath, so it was a long time ago, when I went to the domestic abuse center, they actually gave a slip of paper that said, like, these are the signs of an abusive relationship. And I never learned this growing up. I was raised in a very strict household by a mother with mental illness. So they gave this little piece of paper that said, like, if the relationship starts off in a whirlwind and it's like sudden love at first sight and everything's really intense, if there's high intensity at the beginning of the relationship, that's a red flag. And it's all about just pulling you in, drawing you in, and then once you've totally given your heart to them, then the abuse starts, right? So that's pretty difficult. So let's get back to, if you're in a situation where you really can't cut off contact and you can't even limit contact. In this instance, you really are going to have to take the opposite approach. So instead of limiting contact, it's all about you giving yourself self-care. Self-care like crazy. You're going to have to, like, meditate and go sit outside under a tree when the weather is warm, go to therapy, get massages, like whatever you can do so you can keep your sanity when you're being around this person all the time. And still, you're also going to have to be practicing every day, setting clear boundaries and holding to those consequences as well. And I have a couple of tips here for how to respond to these difficult people. Okay, so you've set your boundaries. Actually, let me back up. Let me just say, Lisa says they are so sneaky and scary when they get called out. Yes, it's very scary. Okay, so let me refocus here. Okay, so when you are setting your boundaries with this person, you know, it's probably pretty likely that they've triggered you also because they're being an ass, right? They're being a difficult person. So you're like, just want to, like, wring this person's neck, right? So I get it. I get triggered all the time, you guys. So you're going to feel triggered. You're going to want to push back or lash out or get angry or yell at them or tell them to F off or whatever. But, and you certainly could do that if you're able to then cut contact. Okay? If it's like some random person on Facebook, if you feel like telling someone off, go for it. You totally can do that. And you don't need my permission. But if it's someone if it's like, you know, your mother-in-law who lives with you and she's constantly violating your boundaries and she's constantly, like, being toxic and all this stuff, or maybe she's, like, complaining all the time or yelling or whatever, and if you tell her off, it's just going to make things worse. And the same thing with the toxic category. Somebody who, no matter what you say to them, they lash out at you. So with a lot of these difficult people, the more you say, the worse it's going to get. Okay? So what I mean by that is, like, they're spouting their stuff at you, and you have the response that you want to defend yourself and you want to tell your point of view, and so you send this really long email, or you start yelling at them or talking to them, blah 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 blah. All they hear is wah 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 wah. Remember the Peanuts cartoon where, like, the adults would be in the background and they'd be like wah 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 wah. That person, I promise you, they cannot hear what you are saying. So you're wasting that 30 minutes writing that email, trying to clear up the confusion, trying to state your point of view. It's all they're going to do. Yes, Christina says they turn anything against you. Right. So all they're going to do is just take everything that you said in that email and argue with you about it. So all that you're doing is perpetrating the argument. they want a battle. This difficult person wants a fight. So when you respond by fighting verbally or sending an email or a big long Facebook post or whatever, that just gives fuel for what they want. They don't want to hear your point of view, okay? That's just the truth. And, you know, on a case-by-case basis, every once in a while there might be somebody who can really hear you and you can have a loving discussion. But if they're really fitting in this category of difficult people that I've gone through, chances are they're not in that space where they can meet you at the level that you are communicating at, okay? So they just really are not able to meet you at your level. They just can't. No matter how you word the email, no matter how nice of a tone of voice you have, no matter how much love energy you're trying to flow to them, they just can't meet you at the level that you're at, okay? And so in some instances, it would be appropriate to just not respond. And in some instances, you know, on a case-by-case basis, you might respond, but keep it as short as possible. Short. Like really short, like one sentence. And then, because the less you say, the better. Because remember what I said, the more you say, the more it's just ammunition. And in fact, I wouldn't even respond to anything that they're getting mad at you about. Because that's just more, it just engages more arguing. You have to just subdue your ego. If your ego is bruised by whatever they're saying, you're not going to win that argument because they are going to argue on and on. So what you do is the less you can say, the better. Don't engage with any of their argument. And one of my favorite things to say is simply, thank you. Just thank you. Or thank you for sharing. Okay? Because then I'm not agreeing or disagreeing or arguing with anything that they're saying. And so it's not perpetuating the argument. Another thing that I'll sometimes say, let's say they're accusing me of something. You're so blah, blah, blah. Sometimes I'll say, you could be right. So you might jot down those phrases. If you have trouble with people who are really difficult and there's conflict issues, then you can try saying thank you, or thank you for sharing, or you could be right about that. You could be right. Okay. Another thing that you can do, oh, I forgot to mention this. Don't let yourself get emotional in the moment. Don't get emotional back at them, because that's just more, it's just going to snowball. Now, yes, you're probably going to be mad. You're going to need to go vent. You're going to need to call a friend and say, oh my God, this person just pissed me off so bad. Or whatever it is that you need to do to let that out. But in the moment, do your best to just speak rationally and calmly and state your point and then get out. Okay? Some of you watching this may have like an ex-spouse who is a very difficult person, and you still have to communicate with them because you have children together. So in that, you can't cut off contact. You have to communicate with them about your children, about the well-being of your children, and boy, will you get good at setting boundaries and staying calm and clear, communicating clearly. One more thing that I'm going to mention that you can do in a situation with a person that you can't escape from is you can cross your arms. I know you can't see me, but you can cross your arms, your forearms over your solar plexus. So just going to sit like this, and you're blocking, it's an energy block, okay? So those of you who are really sensitive like I am, if someone's yelling at me, I feel it in my stomach, like it goes right into that solar plexus. And that's a real sensitive area for me, and it might be for you too. And you can literally just use your arms and just block it. And that's just protecting your energy. Okay? So do we have any questions before we wind things up? All right. Any questions, any thoughts, any comments? Let me see. Do I have any? Yay, we got some hearts going. Yeah, so what I want to close with is, I think most of you watching this already know that I work in the area of psychic protection. And, you know, that's a really big scope, actually. So, you know, it's all the way over here with, like, psychic attacks, curses, hexes, and, like, entity attacks, demonic attacks, and, like, really serious, major stuff over here. You know, all the way over here to, like, people who are empaths and the energies out in the world are just challenging for them. And then, like, all the way to, on this end of the spectrum, just your plain and simple interpersonal stuff. Boundaries. You know, if you're having boundary issues, if you're attracting difficult people in your life and or you're having boundary issues, I guarantee you there are boundary issues also going on in your energy field. So there are reasons why you attract energy vampires. There are reasons why you attract different kinds of difficult people. And once you learn how to build up your energy more, then you will attract those people less and less. Now, let me be clear. There are difficult people in the world, and there's no amount of meditation or psychic protection work that you can do to make all of those people go away. But you will be able to handle it better. So how to deal with difficult people actually falls into the scope of all of the work that I do with psychic protection. So it's over here on the interpersonal side, and then we've got like the totally spiritual warfare kinds of issues over here. So if you need any more help with this, then feel free to send me a message and let me know. And I also want to let you know that right now, as I'm doing this this class, our monthly Sacred Healing Circle, that's my monthly program that I have, our monthly Sacred Healing Circle, we're getting ready to start some new material. We tend to go in cycles where we focus on certain things for a while, and we're getting ready to shift our focus to energy boundary types of work. So all about strengthening your energy, how to remove any of those aspects of your aura that happen to be energetically attracting some of those difficult people, some of those toxic people out in the world. So we'll actually be working on that in our monthly circle. So if you're interested in that, then you can visit my website, www.psychicprotectionsanctuary.com, and learn more about that program. It's ongoing. You can join anytime, but now is a really good time because of what we're going to be jumping into soon. And when you go to my website, you can find that there's it's under classes, the classes tab. Okay, I think that's it for announcements, except that from now on, our Facebook Live classes are going to be just once a month, and they're going to be on the first Monday of the month, starting in February 2018. Thanks to all of you who joined live, and those of you who are watching the replay, definitely post your questions and comments, and I would love to hear from you. Until next time, see you later. Bye.